Thank you. Good afternoon. And my name is Chuck Connerly. Erica did a great job of introducing me, and I'm really glad to be here. This is now my 7th year here at the University of Iowa. I was an undergraduate at Grinnell College back in the 60s, and then I left the state for a long, long time. So I feel a bit like the prodigal son. I'm really glad to be back. Interestingly, 4 years ago, I was in this very room, practically on this day, when the Iowa Initiative for Sustainable Communities was very young, and most people had never heard of it. And so I had a chance to give a talk to the president of the university and the provost and a bunch of other people who wear suits for a living. And the result was the beginning of some really outstanding support that has enables us to brag in a more public fashion today. So one of the things that's really been very true for the last 4 or 5 or 6 years is the tremendous support we've gotten from the University of Iowa, which makes me really darn glad that I convinced my wife to come to Iowa after being in Florida for 27 years. Oh my goodness. So I'm going to do a brief introduction, a little bit of history about IISC, and then I'll let Nick Benson take over to talk about what's happening today. Actually, even before I had come to Iowa, I knew I was coming to Iowa, but in April 22nd, 2008, I was still in Tallahassee, Florida, but I was checking on things on the internet. I was curious what my new place was going to be like, and at that time, during Earth Week or Earth Day, Sally Mason made a pronouncement that at the request of the faculty that sustainability would become a central priority for the university. Well, coming in as a director of the School of Urban and Regional Planning, I said, well, this is our chance because urban and regional planning gets sustainability. And even though we're only a very small program, we have 9 faculty and about 50 graduate students, I knew this was an opportunity to have an impact both on the university and the state. And so while the IISC didn't get created at that moment, certainly with President Mason's support for sustainability on campus, the path was set. And as it's highlighted here, she talked about the operations of the university and certainly trying to make the campus much more sustainable than it is. She talked about the academic mission and the creation of what would become the sustainability certificate for undergraduates here, but also our responsibilities to the greater society. And that's really, I think, where we have taken our cue in terms of the creation of IISC, trying to take what we have in terms of knowledge and expertise and apply it to the issues that are faced by communities, certainly throughout the state of Iowa. So what are those issues? This is a lovely slide that one of our field problems groups that began this process a few years ago found, and I think it's still emblematic. Iowa communities at a crossroads. Communities continuously go through change, but Iowa communities, we know, are going through continual change. They face economic development challenges. Whether you blame it on Walmart or blame it on the decline in the number of people that are employed in farming and the decline in the family farm, smaller towns don't have the rich central business district that they once had. 2/3 of the counties of the state are losing population. While the state as a whole is continuing to grow in population, much of the growth is focused on a select number of cities, particularly in the Des Moines metro area, and then the Creative Corridor, and then the Quad Cities. One of the cities that we're working in this year is Sioux City, and Sioux City has been on a population decline since, I believe, the 1960s. And of course, many smaller communities have experienced population decline as well. So one of the issues that is faced by smaller towns, particularly, but even bigger towns, and frankly, all of our towns are not very big. There are only 11 cities in Iowa that have a population of 50,000 or more, out of 947. So when we're talking about issues related to small towns and medium-sized towns, we're pretty much talking about every city or town in the state of Iowa. So economic challenges are faced by these towns. Environmental challenges are faced as well. I had a student working with me this summer who was from Mississippi and was a little dubious about this notion about climate change. And then when what are now becoming annual floods in Iowa City and the Cedar and the Iowa River in particular came through, and I said, and he saw all the effort that was being made, at least to protect the university. And I said, this is not normal. This used to not happen very often. It would happen there was a reason why it was a 100-year flood or even a 500-year flood. It just didn't happen very often. It's now happening every year. And the climate scientists tell us that the models that they have that describe global warming and climate change are predicting this, because the moisture is coming up from the Gulf of Mexico and it's coming up north, and it's creating major rain events that are interrupted by drought. And that's exactly the story that we've had. So we have environmental issues. We have issues particularly with water quality in the state of Iowa. And our modern modes of farming and agriculture, and I can get in trouble saying this, but that has resulted in fertilizers and impacts of nitrates on our water systems, such that our water that in our streams and our rivers is not as safe to drink as it used to be, and cost a lot more to make clean. And it has an impact not just in Iowa, but it has an impact down the Mississippi River and the Gulf of Mexico, where there's a dead zone roughly the size of Connecticut in the summertime, when there's basically no organic life because of not just Iowa, but all the fertilizer that comes down from the Midwest. And then there are issues of social equity, and there's issues of health that affect Iowa communities. We're an older state. We have an aging population, so we have issues of health related to that. And we have issues of social equity, particularly as the population of the state begins to change demographically. That's particularly seen in cities and towns that have meatpacking as a central part of their economy. So there are many challenges. And so in a sense, Iowa is at a crossroads. And the purpose of the IISC is to enable communities to deal with those issues, to confront them, and basically be creative and innovative communities to address problems that are new and are different and require new ways of doing things. And we believe that the university has a special role in playing this, not in terms of telling people what to do, but in listening to them, listening to their problems, their issues, and coming up with solutions using the talent that we have at the university. There's also a challenge, not just to Iowa, but a challenge to higher education as well. Higher education is, frankly, not as well respected as it once was, whether it's in Iowa or elsewhere in the United States. A lot of people believe, and with good reason, that higher education is overpriced in the U.S. Many public universities are no longer completely publicly supported. They increasingly are supported through tuition. That means tuition gets raised over and over again. In Iowa, we've not had tuition raises in the last 3 years, but that doesn't mean that there haven't been rising costs in Iowa as elsewhere. So a perception there, and a valid perception, that higher education is overpriced in the U.S., a perception that increasingly specialized faculty spend more and more of their time learning about less and less. And therefore, the relevance of what they're doing seems to be, at least to the casual observer, to be not very clear at all. And those of us who've studied American history, we do remember the Morrill Act of 1862, and we do remember the notion, the idea that American universities have a public purpose, they have a community purpose. And even if you're not a land-grant school, and Iowa is not a land-grant school like Iowa State is, nevertheless, we are a public university. And we do have obligations to benefit the public in general. Nevertheless, there's been reduced support for higher education from state legislatures. I read a report not too long ago, this past summer, that looked at state spending on higher education in all 50 states. Now compared to just before the Great Recession. There are only 2 states in the United States that are spending on higher education at pre-recession levels, Alaska and I think North Dakota. All the other 48 states have reduced their spending on higher education in constant dollars over the last 6 years. So there's a lot of pressure on universities. And so how do we respond? What do we do about this? How do we make universities more relevant? How do we demonstrate that we serve a useful purpose in the context of what I've just described? Well, one way to do that, I firmly believe, and we firmly believe, is through public engagement. And this is a public engagement not based on we're the experts and we're going to tell you what to do. It's a engagement based on reciprocity, on going, as we do, going into communities, having conversations with them, finding out what the issues are. Are they economic development? Are they environmental? Are they social equity? Or whatever. And then coming back to the university and finding the expertise that can work with that community, but work with that community on a basically a reciprocal fashion where there's dialogue and conversation as we develop and fashion and craft a solution rather than just simply saying, here, this is what you should do because we know best. A second focus is on sustainability. Sustainability with its focus on the kinds of issues that Iowa faces, environment, economy, equity. Provides a framework, an overview that allows different departments, different academic disciplines from across the campus to work together on developing common solutions. It's a big concept. Some people think it's a little vague, but it's a uniting concept. Everybody can sort of participate in that. And then the third notion that we worked on at IIC is targeting. Targeting specific communities, bringing to bear multiple departments, multiple students on those communities for a year or 2 years, so we can have really a significant impact. So also, there's a lot of talent, there's a lot of creativity. As any faculty member, or many faculty members will tell you, our students know much more about computers and smartphones and other ways of being creative than we do. And so there's just a lot of creative talent in our classrooms. And students are doing projects all the time. The question is, should that project that they do simply be something that is graded by the faculty member, returned to the student, and nothing ever happens? Or should we try to harness it so that it benefits communities as well? So what we're trying to do is assist local communities at a time of fiscal stress, both for universities as well as local communities. We know in Iowa that a lot of communities are struggling with how they're responding to the reduction in commercial property tax. This is a challenge for communities. They have lots of problems for which they don't necessarily have the resources. Universities are challenged as well. By coming together, we can help each other out and also let the state of Iowa know that universities serve a mighty important public purpose. So the result will become that universities will become increasingly relevant and important to addressing problems. This helps both communities. So as Erica mentioned, we started in urban regional planning. We started the Iowa Initiative for Sustainable Communities in 2009. We started just in the School of Urban and Regional Planning with a course that we teach called Field Problems, which is a second-year capstone course that all of our master's students are required to take. We decided to focus it on sustainability. We gave it a brand. We gave it a focus. But always it involved both students and faculty. So basically most of our faculty, we have 9 faculty, as I said earlier, almost all the faculty, as well as the students, are working on these problems. So this is really a collective effort that's taking place. It's not just a group of students being handed an assignment and said, we'll see you at the end of the semester or see you at the end of the year. The faculty and the students are working on these problems week in and week out. But the idea was that as much as we love the School of Urban and Regional Planning, it's important that sustainability is too big for one field or one discipline or one department. Sustainability has a multitude of components, and therefore requires a multidisciplinary answers, and the university therefore is really the appropriate scale, not the department, for addressing issues of sustainability. So with a grant from the university that we were able to attain in 2012. We were able to hire staff, hire Nick Benson, and begin to expand IISC to the rest of the campus. We've continued to get more and more staff support. We're now becoming an empire, I think. And we've also been a central part of the new Office of Outreach and Engagement, which was created about a year and a half ago, headed by Linda Snetzlar. And so it's been, that office now oversees the operations. Urban Regional Planning still participates as a member, along with 9 or 10 other departments in it, but it's really now become a campus-wide effort. What does IISC do? It pairs, as I said earlier, it pairs students and faculty with communities to develop projects that relate to sustainability in those communities. Most projects are part of a UI course. Rather than creating new courses, we're using existing courses, but we're transforming those courses into meaningful community engagement experiences. Currently, we have about 10 plus colleges and departments. We also partner with ArtShare, which is an outstanding program that takes artists and creative people across campus and takes them out to the 99 counties in the state of Iowa. We now have a competitive selection process. We have a request for proposals that we do. We now have, we had multiple applications, about 6 applications for this current academic year, 2014, 2015. We have an advisory board that makes selections, and we had 3 top applicants this year: Sioux City, Iowa City, which is in the middle right there, and then Decorah, Iowa, which one is Decorah? Anybody guess? I know which one it is. Let's see if they know. And this is actually, I think this is because it's going so well this year. I think this is going to be a 2-year partnership, so we're excited about that. So this is my last slide, and then Nick will finally get 2 minutes to wrap up everything else. We're very proud of this map. Now, obviously, we've now, I think it's 14 communities we've been in. If you distinguish between Decorah on the one hand and Winneshiek County on the other, and count them as 2 communities, which they are, we've been in 14 communities, including the ones we're in today. I'm really excited about the fact that up until this year, we were strictly in eastern Iowa, but Sioux City submitted this outstanding application about a year ago, a little less than a year ago. And we wanted to go west. We didn't want to be just simply the University of Eastern Iowa. It represents some logistical challenges, of course. It's a long drive there. But thanks to a very enthusiastic group of people out there who happen to be Hawkeyes, and we're having some really good projects and programs out there. And I know Nick's going to talk about that, so I'm going to let Nick take over right now.
I'm going to walk around a little bit. So let's talk a little bit about the projects that we actually do. What are we actually doing in the communities? I'm starting back a couple of years with Dubuque. Dubuque was a fantastic partner for us, and it's kind of holds a special place in our program because it was the first city that we went to that had more than just the School of Urban and Regional Planning. We spent 2 years in Dubuque, and this is really where we got our legs. This is where we were able to see what we could do as an expanded initiative. This is an example of a project that I think represents kind of the best of what we can do as an initiative. This was a project in Dubuque where we worked with the city engineering department and the public works department to focus on watersheds within the community. The context behind this project is that for 2 years, 2 summers, Dubuque had unprecedented flooding in their urban areas. At one point, they had, I think, between 9 to 12 inches of rain over the course of 24 to 48 hours. They saw significant flooding throughout their urban areas, particularly in the Catfish Creek watershed. And so Dubuque was interested in kind of doing a significant snapshot of that watershed. And also to try and better engage the public within the watersheds in Dubuque. So we tapped into a course in our Earth and Environmental Sciences department called Field Methods in Hydrologic Science. It's a graduate course that some upper level undergraduates take too, and there was about 25 students involved. And What they did is they went up to the Catfish Creek watershed and Bee Branch Creek watershed in Dubuque and did some significant scientific monitoring. So they did flow measurements, they did topographic surveying. You can see a picture of them, if you can see that on the left. And one of the things that Dubuque was kind of excited about is this was 25 scientists coming up and able to do kind of a comprehensive snapshot at once. It's very difficult for a city to have 25 engineers or scientists coming in at once. Usually you have 4 or 5 people on staff. But the part of the project that I was most excited about was the community engagement side. So Dubuque was saying, we need to better engage our public within our watersheds. How do we easily connect the public beyond making them try to come to public presentations, beyond getting them to try and do an online survey? How can we connect them easily with their watersheds? And so this installation of what's called a crowd hydrology tool, I think was really amazing. And it's very simple. Basically what it is the students put this wooden plank in the water, and it's got a measurement on it, and it simply says, what's the water height today? So the water, you can look at that middle picture and see the different water levels. And then there's a sign that stands along a walking path that's along both Bee Branch Creek, but also Catfish Creek as well. And the idea is it says, what's the water height today? Text us. So anybody walking along that path can take out their smartphone, text in whatever the water height is, and it goes to an online database that tracks that information over time. Now, Dubuque was interested in to see kind of what data they'd get. Obviously, this is citizen data, so it's not like it's professional engineers going out or professional scientists going out. But more than anything, they were interested to see people thinking and caring about the water. Instead of just taking your nightly walk and not thinking about the waterway that's next to you, this sign kind of prompts you to engage. It's easy, doesn't take long, you don't have to be a scientist to do this. And so it goes to this online database. Actually, in Iowa City, a few of these have been put up, I believe along Clear Creek, perhaps. And this is kind of a really interesting tool, and I was really pleased to see the students doing this. As Chuck was mentioning earlier, one of the things that we do really well is kind of innovate maybe more traditional processes. So bringing in the digital engagement tools, things like that. Dubuque was really pleased with this project, and I think it gave us confidence that as we expanded across campus, that there were so many different departments that were able to offer a lot to this initiative. Another example, this was after Dubuque, we went to 3 new cities, Muscatine, Cedar Rapids, and Washington, Iowa. And I use this project as an example because it's another way in which our students. Yeah, we'll try to dim the lights here a little bit better. I know it might be hard to see the pictures on the bottom here, and I'm going to be pointing to them here in a second. So this project was completed by our School of Urban and Regional Planning, our urban planning department is really one of our core departments that we rely on every single year. And this project started out as kind of a traditional connectivity master plan project, which when I talk about connectivity, we're talking about PED and bike master plans. But the second part of the project that was really kind of innovative and something that Muscatine was so happy to receive was a wayfinding app. So wayfinding, we typically think of having signs that say this way to the courthouse, this way to the museum, this way to downtown. And that's great. But we know that today's generation is much more digital. A lot of times people that are traveling utilize their smartphones to find their way. So what happens if we take what traditionally has been just a physical sign and actually make it an app? And this is exactly what our urban planning students did. They created a free online app. I believe it was free. Was it free, Chuck?
Yes.
Yes, I thought it was. That basically loaded all of the major landmarks in Muscatine, would allow you to download the app, you could hold it up, you could see where those landmarks are. But more than that, it also gave you information about that landmark. So as you see in the middle picture, that's the screen that pops up that shows you the different landmarks. But then on the right is a picture of the actual information that comes up. This was the Alexander Clark House, for example. You'll see that it's in English and Chinese. Interesting about Muscatine, Muscatine has a very strong connection with China, both in terms of industry and culture, but also the Chinese president has a soft spot in his heart for Muscatine because he spent some time there in his earlier career. And so last time he came to the United States, he went to Washington, D.C., and then came to Muscatine. So that is the reason for the Chinese description as well. Another example project, I mentioned that we worked in the city of Washington. Washington came to us. Their Chamber of Commerce director was very proactive. We were actually holding a presentation on campus, not necessarily looking for new community partners at that point. And their Chamber of Commerce director showed up, was very interested in the program. We went through the process of selecting the community, and the Chamber of Commerce continued to stay on as a strong partner. And this is a wonderful project that we worked on with the City of Washington's Chamber of Commerce on branding the community. One of the things that Iowa's communities face today is trying to figure out what makes them unique. What's the difference between Washington? What's the difference between Washington and Wellman and Indianola and other communities that are smaller communities across the state? Washington is about 40 minutes south of Iowa City. Sometimes it's thought of as a bedroom community to Iowa City. But they felt like that there's a unique history in Washington that they wanted to try to tap into. They have one of the oldest continually operating movie theaters in the entire country. They have some amazing film history there that nobody really knows about. And so we tapped into our Marketing Institute at the College of Business, another great partner here on campus, and 4 or 5 students worked over the course of the year with the Chamber to do some strengths and weaknesses analysis, a SWOT analysis you'll see on the left in terms of what makes Washington kind of tick as a community. They did a kind of a formal branding campaign and also came up with new promotional materials. And their final tagline that they came up with for the community that they have now adopted is Discover a Classic. And this actually rolled out through the KCRG Our Town series this summer. If any of you watched Channel 9 locally, this branding campaign rolled out because Washington was an Our Town community this summer. This is a great example of a really useful practical project. The Chamber of Commerce, or the Chamber Director is the only staff member that the Washington Chamber pays, and so they have very little staff resources and very little financial resources to do anything like this. So they were thrilled to be working with our Marketing Institute. So that's just an example of a few past projects, but we wanted to spend our last remaining minutes talking about the IASC today, giving you a little bit of a glimpse into what are we doing this year. And I put up this slide just so that you get a little bit of an idea of how kind of the scale of which we're working this year. By May, we will have completed 31 projects across the 3 cities that Chuck had mentioned earlier, Decorah, Iowa City, and Sioux City. And we'll be pushing 250 students involved in this initiative across the university. Many of them graduate students, but we also have been involving more and more upper-class undergraduate students. And as Chuck was mentioning, we really have the full campus at our disposal in terms of resources that are available. And as such, there are, at this point, 10 colleges and departments involved in this initiative. The other thing that our communities often like to hear too is this last number that I have on here. When you get that many students who are working on semester or year-long projects, and that these projects become more than just a class assignment, there ends up being a lot of man hours that get put into these projects. So last year we estimated that we spent about 30,000 hours working on projects for our 3 cities, and I would expect this year that we will be at least there, if not more. So that gives you a bit of an idea. So why did we pick our 3 cities this year? Chuck mentioned that our advisory board picked these 3 cities out of several applications. In Decorah and Wenatchee County, one of the main reasons was because of the substance and scope of the projects that they proposed to us. Frac sand mining is kind of a hot button issue right now in Northeast Iowa due to the unique geology of that area. Frac sand is not fracking. So fracking is the end process that you hear about oftentimes in North Dakota or Pennsylvania. But the silica sand, the frac sand, is one of the ingredients that's required to complete the fracking process. And that is of interest in Wenatchee County due to its geology, due to the amount of silica sand that's near the surface in that area. And so there's some major policy decisions that are going to have to be made by the Wenatchee County Board of Supervisors over the next year in terms of how they want to and if they want to regulate frac sand. And if they regulate frac sand mining, why would they regulate frac sand mining? Currently, it's not occurring in Wenatchee County, but if you look at western Wisconsin, there are 60 mine sites that have been implemented over the last several years. The great thing about this project is it's actually 5 or 6 projects rolled into one topic. This is the first time where, as an initiative, we've been able to engage lots of different departments under kind of one umbrella issue. For example, our School of Urban Planning is conducting an economic impact assessment of what would happen in Wenatchee County if frac sand mining was allowed. Our School of Geographic and Sustainability Sciences is doing some mapping and modeling to predict, well, where would those mines go if companies were allowed to mine in Wenatchee County. Our College of Engineering this spring is going to be looking at what are some of the transportation impacts that happen as a result of mining activities and the trucking that happens with the sand. And I enjoy having my alma mater, College of Law, involved this year. It's the first time we've involved the College of Law. They're doing some analysis around the regulations and potential ways in which Wenatchee County can control the frac sand if they so choose. So our board was really thrilled to see this project proposed as part of the application, and I think we're seeing tremendous results already, only halfway through the year. The other thing that's amazing about this is we're always interested in communities that are actually going to implement and take what we do and do something with that information. And we know for a fact that Wenatchee County is going to be utilizing these reports to do their own policy decisions when we're all finished with this. So we're excited to see the results of this project, or these many projects. Another project that I wanted to highlight in Wenatchee County is actually a project specifically with the city of Decorah. This is, again, another project with our Field Problems course in the School of Urban Planning. This is a project revolving around stormwater management and actually the funding also of stormwater projects. So we know that it's not always cheap, and so how do you fund that appropriately? But I put this project in here because it's also an example of us being able to effectively collaborate with the local college. Luther College has been a tremendous partner for our students in this project. One of the things that our students needed was on-the-ground water quality monitoring in Decorah as part of this project. And it's very difficult for our students to drive 2.5 hours every single time they want to do something like that. So we connected with a fantastic biology professor at Luther who has done an amazing job of working with our students as well as some of her students to do a part of that project. And I'll mention a little bit later about this, but I think this is proving to us that as part of our own sustainability as a program and ensuring that our projects continue to be implemented and progressed even when we're done in a community is going to take us partnering with local colleges like Luther. And then the final project I wanted to mention in Decorah is to kind of show you the range of projects that we're doing. Chuck mentioned earlier that sustainability is really broad. And often when I talk about art, people wonder, what does art have to do with sustainability? Well, it has a lot to do with sustainability because we know if we look at that 3-legged or 4-legged stool of sustainability that culture and kind of the human interaction part of sustainability is important, and art can play a key role. So here we're partnering with ArtShare, and I'm thrilled to have Leslie and Kate here today who run the ArtShare program to work with some MFA students in the School of Art on a public art project along Recreation Trail in Wenatchee County. And we're still in the proposal process in terms of figuring out exactly what those sculptures are going to be, but most likely it's going to be our MFA students creating maybe 4 or 5 sculptures that represent the Nordic heritage of that area. Decorah is known as having a lot of Norwegian heritage. They have an amazing Nordic Fest in the summertime. And so this is a great opportunity for our MFA students to get involved and a way for us to connect art with recreation, with trail usage, and with the general culture of that area. This project will most likely be getting completed in the warm weather months, so we'll be looking for something in late spring and into the summer. Iowa City, our hometown. Iowa City was unique for a few reasons. One of the things that's interesting about Iowa City is they proposed a sustainability marketing project that's kind of unlike what we've done before. Iowa City has some amazing sustainability achievements already. They have a sustainability assessment report that actually documents and measures sustainability throughout the city. A lot of cities don't have that. They've done a lot in terms of climate change and in terms of public transportation. But not everybody knows about this. We haven't necessarily promoted sustainability. And why is it important to promote sustainability? Why is it important for people to know what we're doing? Well, it's because it keeps that ball rolling. The more people that know about the good work that we're doing, the more we're able to connect, the more that the community is able to connect with other communities that are doing good work with sustainability, and that allows us to continue to develop. So we're working with a course in our journalism and mass communication department called Strategic Communication Campaigns. And they will next week be presenting or pitching 2 to 3 different campaigns to the communications director in Iowa City that's focused on trying to promote and improve Iowa City's sustainability image, both locally but then also across the nation. Another kind of unique project is a project that's coming out of our College of Business. We are working on a 5-week sustainability challenge with the citizens of Iowa City. And this is based off of, you can Google something called No Impact Project. This is something that a national organization has done on a weekly scale to challenge residents to think about one issue of sustainability each day over the course of a week. So the first day you think about water, second day you think about your energy usage, third day you may think about how much waste you're using, fourth day you may think about recreation. And so our College of Business students in a sustainability marketing class are creating this challenge program for the city of Iowa City, which will probably be implemented by the city hopefully in the spring. That will allow residents to kind of sign up for this challenge program over the course of 5 weeks. Probably won't be as intense as the No Impact Project, but the point is to kind of raise awareness about how our behaviors daily are part of the whole sustainability of Iowa City. And then finally, a project that we're doing in Iowa City with our Department of Earth and Environmental Science is looking at urban agriculture. And I use this project because it's a wonderful example of our students actually getting their hands dirty. They're actually working in the soil, working on a project. This project is focused on the Chaddox property. It is located just south of City High. It has a long history of a variety of uses. But the city's thinking about potentially using it as an urban agriculture site. But there's a lot of prep work that has to be done before you do that. So our graduate students and some upper-class undergraduate students in the Department of Earth and Environmental Science have been doing a semester-long project on soil testing, soil analysis. You can see them here doing a variety of work. Some of the days were really nice and sunny like this, and others were really cold. So. And our final city, Sioux City. As Chuck mentioned, we were thrilled to get a fantastic application from Sioux City because we've been wanting to breach the I-35 barrier, sort of. And Sioux City provided a lot of great opportunities for our students. One of them is an active transportation plan. And I put this slide in here because it is part of the Blue Zones project. How many people here have heard of the Blue Zones project? Good. We've worked with the Blue Zones project for a few years, and when I first started talking about it, nobody raised their hand. So I'm glad a lot of people do now. Blue Zones project is a statewide health initiative that focuses on a variety of ways to make people healthier. And one of them is changes to our infrastructure and environment. And so this project is actually working on one of the requirements that Sioux City must meet in order to become a designated Blue Zone community. And that is an active transportation plan. An active transportation plan is actually fairly broad in terms of what's all included in it. But some of the things include a bike and pedestrian master plan. You'll see pictures here of our students working. The middle picture is actually Dan Burden, who is kind of a national expert on walkability, who did a wonderful seminar with our students. It was a great opportunity for him to see work that's going on in Sioux City, but also for our students to kind of learn from an expert. So it's a great project. A second project, I'm hitting a lot of urban planning projects, but we've got so many great ones right now. So this project is looking at a specific neighborhood in Sioux City, specifically the Leeds neighborhood. And our urban planning grad students are creating kind of a corridor study looking at some of the things like economic development and walkability within that neighborhood. It's an older neighborhood that has fallen on some hard times, but it's beginning to see some big box development. And there's issues related to how is that impacting the neighborhood. I included this slide because I think this is a great example of how our students can do amazing engagement within the community. And by that I mean they meet with residents, they hold public meetings, they kind of expand the capacity of the city to be able to connect with its residents. We had a great story written about this project a couple weeks ago in Iowa Now. We had our Central Communications Office travel with our students to Sioux City and got some great quotes and information from the residents who are so appreciating the fact that as part of this project, they're part of it. So we're looking forward to seeing the results of this project come spring. The final project that I'm going to talk with you about today is kind of a little bit out there. A lot of people hear the fact that we're working with the School of Library and Information Science and wonder, well, what are you doing with them? Well, first of all, libraries play a really central role in a lot of communities across the state, and oftentimes they're a lot more than a place to check out books. This project is focused on early childhood literacy, and I love the way that Betsy Thompson, the director of the Sioux City Public Library, puts it. She says, this is really the best long-term economic development project you can do for our community. And what she means by that is she's saying that by focusing on early childhood education, we know that it improves long-term education opportunities for our students. And one of the goals of this, of our initiative, is to ensure that all of the young people across the state of Iowa have the opportunity to have a wonderful life within their community, but then also go on to bigger and better things that may be outside of the state, but then also come back to the state or stay in the state. We'd love for them to stay and go to one of our 3 great Regents institutions, particularly the University of Iowa. And so this project, you can see the picture here, our professor Jennifer Burek-Pierce and some of her students meeting with the director of the public library at a meeting. They're looking at really a lot of data set development and kind of connecting the dots of all the different partners that need to be involved in this early childhood literacy programming that's going on in Sioux City. So those are some examples of all the projects that we're doing, and what are we looking forward to? What are some of the next steps with this? Well, obviously we'll continue to expand and add new cities as the years come. We love to continue to add more and more Western communities to our roster. But the other thing we want to make sure we're doing is evaluating the community impact that we're having. I mentioned before that we love to have projects where communities actually begin to implement the project. And so that takes us actually going back to communities that we've worked in and checking in and saying, well, okay, so what's happened? How have you utilized the project? How has it kind of maybe transformed from what we did into maybe something a little bit different? And so we're in the process right now of actually kind of constructing that process of evaluating impacts, also evaluating impacts on campus. We've done a little bit of this in terms of evaluating how these projects benefit students and their educational attainment, a little bit in terms of how the professor has seen improvements within their students over the course of these projects. But we particularly want to know more about, we've been operating now for 4 or 5, 6 years. we're finally able to kind of start to go back to some communities and say, okay, that riverfront development plan we did for you, have you been able to implement parts of that? So we're looking forward to that. Second bullet point here, I talked about our partnership with Luther College and Decorah, and I think we all think that this is really crucial for ensuring that this initiative is something that's long-lasting in the communities. So we call this train the trainer model plus local college partnerships, meaning that we're working with as many local people in the community as possible, and it's not us just coming in and saying to them, well, this is how you have to do it. Instead, it's us working with them and saying, okay, here's what we can provide. What are some of the things you're thinking about? Let's kind of train together on this so that when we leave, there's people that are in the community that are still there to make sure that we implement the projects. I'll say we're really, really proud of the city of Muscatine. After we left Muscatine, we didn't really ever leave. We still keep in touch with everybody. But once our projects finished last spring, they submitted this wonderful Excel file of all of our projects, timeline implementation, committees that they've set up based on who worked with our students, and kind of how they're going to prioritize the projects as they move forward. That's exactly what we want to see with the kind of projects that we're doing. And then finally, you know, as Chuck said, we're not the University of Eastern Iowa, we're the University of Iowa, and we're University for Iowa. And as a result, I think we really want to continue to expand past I-35 because there's different experiences that our students get. We want our students to be able to go to Sioux City. We want our students to be able to go to Southwest Iowa, to Northeast Iowa, to Southeast Iowa. And so I think as we move forward, we'll continue to pursue those opportunities, pursue the opportunities to get as many experiences for our students across the state as possible. And with that, I'll conclude and I'll leave time for questions. The one thing I will mention is the projects I ran through are just kind of a snapshot of what we're doing. But our website, we try our best to keep it updated with all of the projects that we've done. Any of the past projects in previous years all have project reports, photos. Please go online and take a look and see what you might be interested in. I have some of our emails up here. Feel free to contact us at any time if you want to know more about a specific project. And with that, I will open it up for questions.
How have you worked with Sioux Falls and West Sioux City, I guess it is, in terms of the Sioux City project? It seems to me, if I'm not mistaken, Sioux Falls is doing pretty well these days, and I'm wondering how that corridor has been established.
So in terms of our projects with Sioux City, you know, I think Sioux City would tell you that 20 years ago, nobody could tell the difference between Sioux Falls and Sioux City. And you're right, nowadays Sioux Falls is growing exponentially. And some of that is based on things that are happening within the state. Some of it's based on intricacies within the local economy between Sioux Falls and Sioux City. But, you know, I think one of the things that's interesting about Sioux City is it really still is a hub for Northwest Iowa. You're starting to see even more people who might drive to Sioux Falls for certain kinds of shopping or certain kinds of events. But I think that the conversation of Sioux City versus Sioux Falls has come up more and more. And as Chuck mentioned, we are going to most likely be doing, we haven't publicly announced this yet.
Okay, forget what I said.
Well, no, but I guess we can say it here, that we'll be working in Sioux City for a second year. And our staff was just on the phone with our community leaders in Sioux City a week or two ago looking at new projects for next year. And some of those projects focus more on kind of the economic development side of Sioux City and how Sioux City can kind of promote its strengths and begin to maybe compete a little bit better on a scale of Sioux Falls. But the other thing is that we're also looking at thinking about the Sioux City area more regionally. So we're actually going to begin to work with smaller communities outside of Sioux City. There's some development that's going on outside of the city boundaries of Sioux City that's going to have significant impact for Northwest Iowa. There's a $1 billion agro-processing plant that's getting developed south of Sioux City right now. And there's some short and long-term economic issues that are going to go into play there, but also there'll be issues related to housing, transportation, overall quality of life. And so we'd like to get more involved in that in year 2. So, but you know, the thing that's also interesting is technically our partner in Sioux City is the Siouxland Interstate Metropolitan Planning Organization. And they cover more than just the city of Sioux City. They're actually a tri-state entity. And so this year, I think for just maybe simplicity purposes, we tried to see how things would go in the city of Sioux City. But next year, I think we may be working more regionally. So
Is Sioux City a separate SMSA from Sioux Falls?
it is. Yep.
They're
Yep.
about 100 miles apart, I think.
Yeah, they're not even a combined CSA yet. So
I think it's 100 miles.
yeah. Yep.
So I didn't go to the University of Iowa. I went to the other Iowa State University.
That's okay.
I know, I committed. Yeah.
We actually work with ISU sometimes. So
Landscape
architecture, come on.
That was
Yeah.
what I was
Yeah.
interested in, is that I know, and I don't know to what extent they have, but the Iowa State Extension Office,
Mhm.
and they're in many counties across the state of
Yep.
Iowa, and I think it's mostly directed at the agriculture.
yeah.
Would it ever come to play where you would want to work together with them?
And we have.
It's actually happened.
Yeah,
Shockingly
it's actually
enough.
happened. Actually, I meet with there's a program in the College of Design which includes planning, architecture, interior design, and I'm actually good for, their program coordinator for a similar program to what we do, but just within their College of Design. We meet on a monthly basis, we share ideas. They worked on a project in tandem with us in Muscatine last year. Muscatine was interested in developing a dog park, and they wanted some landscape design work for it, and we don't do dog parks. Well, we do parts of dog parks, but not the landscape design part. And so we tapped into that initiative, and I think it went really well. So no, we have no problem. We worked with one of the extension officers in Dubuque when we were doing a local foods project there. So.
But I would think that would be just a sort of a natural partnership. If they're in many other counties throughout the state, then maybe they could, if they knew they could come to you for some expertise in areas where they don't necessarily.
Well, believe it or not, we do compete as well.
Yeah.
So it's,
I know.
but we try to be cordial about it.
Sure.
But on the other hand, we're also trying to create our own stamp. And our stamp, we believe at least, is an emphasis on the engagement of students in their classes and faculty. We don't have extension professionals at the University of Iowa. So the experts really are the people that are in our classrooms, whether they're faculty or students. And so that's our particular focus and distinction, I think.
Thank you. I'm really struck by the opportunities that these students are getting in all of these projects. And I'm curious to know what you're doing to kind of keep track of these students, to figure out how this impacts them over the long term, because it takes students a while sometimes to figure out, wow, that was, they realize in the moment that what they're doing is pretty cool, but over the long haul is when it really becomes significant, or the realization sets in how really extraordinary these opportunities are. So tell us what you're doing to measure that impact on students over time.
So in terms of after they leave the university, it's difficult to keep track of them, and we haven't really done that so it's particularly well. We do keep track of, to some extent, if students get jobs based at least tangentially on the project. So, and sometimes it's actually a direct connection. So, for example, one of our dietetics students was working on a nutrition consulting project in Muscatine and got her a job at the Muscatine Public Health Department as a direct result of the project. And so in that way, the project was very influential on their life. Other times we get students who will talk about how they utilize the project in a job interview. And so in that way, it very much benefited them. The way that we have been tracking student kind of impacts on students has been after the project is finished, we do kind of a lengthy survey and kind of interview with them to hear how they felt like their education was impacted by the project. But you know, it would be wonderful to be able to track them even longer term after that, maybe 3 to 5 years outside of the project, and they're maybe working, or maybe they've gone to grad school, or maybe they've gone on to professional school, and how that has impacted them.
I mean, we track them in urban and regional planning, the students that we have in urban and regional planning, just like we track all of our alumni. We've not done any kind of analysis to see, I mean, because all our students go through this experience, so it's presumably they all benefit. I think my assessment, and that's obviously self-serving, is that it really enables their preparation for professional positions. They've had a really serious introduction to their field. They've gotten experience. They've not just learned about something. They've not just written a paper about it. There's a huge difference between writing a paper for a professor and doing a project for a community. Because especially like in Winter City County, but elsewhere, where people are really depending on what you're going to do, because it does make a difference. And sometimes I think students have a sense that, I remember I had a professor in college that allegedly he used stairs to decide what to grade you. Actually, he used the length of the paper to decide what kind of grade to give you. And if you have that sense that this really doesn't make the difference, it's hard to get excited about what you're doing. But if you've worked with people in the community, it makes a huge difference to them. It raises the bar.
And we're at just about 1 o'clock, so we'll do one more question if you just came out. Thank you so much for coming today.
I like the student situation very much. I graduated in political science here 4 decades ago or so, but I became a broadcaster over time, for another 40 years. And when I talk to students that were in broadcasting or public relations or anything like that, I said, even if you don't get on the air, even if you're a writer back there somewhere, you can be a part of your community.
Yeah.
If they know your skills, they know you're a good public relations person, or if they know you have some background in planning, plan and zone commission, for instance, you can still be very useful and be in whatever profession you happen to end up in. But there's the other things things you learned that you're teaching right now and they're learning right now, they'll never forget those. They'll always be with them. So however they can use them will be, I think, to the community's benefits. And to your benefit. Say, where do you get your education? Well, University of Iowa, and so forth. But I think another question or another answer is, and I don't like to oversimplify, but broadcasters usually do. This is a nature and nurture thing. You discover the nature of the challenge. The town discovers the nature of their challenge, and then you guys come in and nurture their expectations, and as you said, you're congenial to these people, Chuck. You don't come in barging in with big university eye on your sweater and all that kind of stuff. But I'm encouraged. I wanted to be here today, and I'm encouraged by what's happening. I guess that wasn't a question.